If you stop now and look within yourself, you might notice something uncomfortable, a dense, almost imperceptible feeling that time has already stretched too far, and that if it hasn't happened by now, it might never happen. It's a thought that doesn't scream, but slowly seeps in, eroding silently. It appears in the most common conversations, in the invisible comparisons you make without realizing it, in the almost automatic gesture of scrolling through your phone and seeing someone younger achieving something that still seems distant to you. It's as if there were an invisible deadline set by the world, a silent contract that you, without realizing it, have signed. No one says it outright, but it's in the subtext of every success story sold to you. At 25, you were already a millionaire. By 30, you'd already achieved everything. And if you passed that age without getting there, what's left? An uncomfortable silence, looks of pity or veiled judgment, and an internal whisper that tirelessly repeats, "You're late." But what if this delay were actually the precise cadence of a deeper process? What if, as Napoleon Hill said, the mind was simply obeying a program repeated so often that it became internal law? Perhaps what you've experienced so far hasn't been a cycle of failures, but a period of learning and subterranean construction. We live in a culture that idolizes haste and turns youth into an expiration date. After that, according to this narrative, all that's left is to accept secondary roles. Without realizing it, you've become hostage to this script, racing to keep up with whoever started first, whoever was faster, whoever was more visible. But there's a secret almost no one reveals. The most intense fire is the one that takes the longest to ignite. Immediate brilliance may attract but rarely sustains. Haste builds fragile castles. Patience builds eternal fortifications. The world measures its trajectory with clocks, but clocks don't measure depth or awareness. How many of those who arrived early truly sustained what they achieved? How many crumbled under the weight of an identity too fragile to withstand their own victory? You're not late, you're maturing. You're accumulating layers that only decades of experience and mistakes can create. You're learning to read between the lines, to perceive intentions, to recognize patterns invisible to those in a hurry. You're developing resilience, and resilience isn't just about resisting. It's about returning to the battlefield smarter, more sober, and less thirsty for approval. The problem is that no one applauds this phase. There's no celebration for the seed still hidden in the soil. To outsiders, you appear stagnant. To your own eyes, you're laying the foundation for what's yet to come. Hill called this shielding against toxic mental environments, the ability to protect your purpose from the erosion of weak opinions. If you give in to the pressure of being late, you sacrifice solidity to satisfy others' haste. And haste is the enemy of greatness. The price of achieving too soon is high. You surrender your identity. Achieving before you're ready is like becoming a prisoner of the role expected of you. Your life becomes about maintaining your image, not expanding your essence. Those who arrive later arrive freer. They don't need to prove anything. They don't seek a platform. They simply build with purpose and vision. But this takes courage. Courage to reject the inherited timeline. Courage to walk at one's own pace, even if it seems slow. Courage to endure the awkward questions without definitive answers. Courage to understand that in the game of depth, the first chapters are invisible, and invisibility is strategy, not defeat. Perhaps your life up until now has been an invisible laboratory. Every failure, every refusal, every closed door has shaped a unique lens through which you interpret the world. This lens will be your advantage when the time comes, but it requires something rare: silence. Silence to listen to yourself. Silence to rewrite narratives. Silence to decide what you truly want to build. The world gets lost in the noise of those who rush. Real power belongs to those who wait, observe, and only act when the foundation is solid. There's no need to announce its arrival. It's necessary to ensure that, when it does happen, its presence is impossible to ignore. This is strategic delay, transforming apparent pauses into an accumulation of power. So the question that should guide you into the next phase remains: is it more important to arrive quickly or to arrive ready? Because this decision, more than any other, will define not only the moment, but also how you will be remembered. Who decided that life must peak in youth? Who spread the idea that after 30 or 40, all that's left is to maintain what you've already achieved or accept less than you dreamed of? This belief wasn't born with you. It was planted with precision, watered by years of subliminal messages and carefully selected examples. It infiltrated films that romanticize youth as the pinnacle of life, advertisements that sell urgency as a value, interviews that extol prodigies and silence those who started late. It's mental programming disguised as common sense, a psychological trap that shapes expectations. Napoleon Hill called it the law of cosmic habit. Any thought, repeated enough times, becomes an internal law. Believing it's too late to change or achieve isn't an observation. It's the result of hearing and repeating a lie until it becomes an automatic reflex. You see it in family conversations, when someone comments that an acquaintance is still trying, with that tone of veiled disapproval. You feel it when you scroll through social media feeds and see younger people flaunting instant achievements. It's present in news reports that highlight those who reach major milestones early, while overlooking trajectories that blossom later. It's a silent conditioning. If it doesn't happen early, it's not worth it. But haste has never been synonymous with depth. On the contrary, many who arrive too quickly have become prisoners of a fragile success, built more to impress than to last. Think about the people you know who radically changed their lives after turning 40 or 50. Maybe it's a neighbor who left a stable, safe job to start their own business, transforming something simple into a local landmark. Or that friend who, after years of raising her children, decided to go back to school and start the career she always dreamed of, proving that fresh starts have no expiration date. It could even be a relative who, after a lifetime in one profession, discovered a dormant talent and, with patience, built a new path. These stories rarely make headlines, but they carry the essence of truth. Maturity can be a strategic advantage. We live surrounded by messages that associate value with speed. Movies show brilliant young people who win early, as if this were the rule rather than the exception. Digital platforms extol instant virality, as if it were definitive proof of competence. Without realizing it, you begin to measure your life by a stopwatch that wasn't created for you. Hill taught that the mind doesn't question orders received repeatedly. If you feed your mind with daily comparisons, you're training it to see limits instead of possibilities. Breaking this cycle requires courage to do something counterintuitive. Slow down to regain control. It's not about being slow, but about channeling energy into what truly matters, even if it takes longer. It's the difference between running in circles to appear busy and moving forward in a straight line, building something solid. The first movement wears you down and creates the illusion of progress. The second transforms you, even if silently. Nature reveals this clearly. The most resilient trees are those that grow slowly, deepening their roots before expanding their crowns. It's the same in human life. Success that blossoms too early may not weather the inevitable storms, while that cultivated with patience and purpose becomes virtually unshakable. What they said about haste was good for others, not for you. When you understand that time can be your ally, the urgency shifts focus. It stops being about competing with other people's youth and becomes about making the most of each step with the clarity that only maturity offers. This is when the world begins to underestimate you, and that's precisely where your greatest advantage lies. Because while they expect your movement to be small, you prepare a step that will change the entire game. The idea that only the beginning of life matters is one of the most limiting narratives you can accept. Many live as if the only value lies in achieving things early, forgetting that there are strengths and abilities that only develop over time. Rapid success may seem seductive, but it is often built on fragile structures, sustained more by momentary enthusiasm than by a solid foundation. Those who arrive too early may be noticed, but they don't always stay. Those who arrive at the right time are here to stay. Napoleon Hill observed that most people don't understand the profound difference between haste and purpose. Haste is driven by fear of falling behind. Purpose is driven by clarity of purpose. The problem is that society rewards apparent movement more than real progress. How many times have you seen someone praised not for what they built, but for the speed with which they did it? But after a few years, how many were still there, solid, consistent, immune to the ups and downs? What would happen if, instead of trying to compete with others' haste, you decided to become unshakable? This question is uncomfortable because it requires giving up the game of comparison. And that means facing moments when everything seems too slow. It means enduring the silence, the doubts, and even the judgment of those who don't understand your process. Think about building a bridge. The most time-consuming part isn't visible. It's the foundation, invisible underwater, that ensures the structure will withstand decades of use. In life, the same thing happens. Years of silent preparation aren't wasted. They're what make you capable of bearing the weight of what's to come. And this preparation isn't just technical or professional. It's mental, emotional, and often spiritual. Have you ever wondered why some people, when they finally achieve what they wanted, fall apart emotionally? Often, it's because success arrived before their identity was ready. Bill said that wealth without mental preparation becomes a burden. A mind untrained to handle responsibility and pressure turns achievement into a burden. That's why so many get there and shortly after want to go back to where they were. Now imagine resisting the temptation to rush. Imagine saying no to opportunities that shine but don't align with who you want to be. Imagine choosing to build, even when it means going unnoticed. This decision is counterintuitive in today's world, but it's precisely what separates the ephemeral from the lasting. The curious thing is that when you operate at this pace, the world starts to wonder how to react. People can't measure you by common standards. You're not running the same race, you're not tied to their calendar. This creates a sense of strangeness, even resistance, but it also elicits quiet respect. Those who aren't predictable are harder to control. Are you willing to experience this kind of freedom? Because real freedom isn't about doing whatever you want at any time. It's about having enough clarity to reject what doesn't build, even if everyone tells you you're wasting your time. It's about trusting your own process to the point where you don't need to prove anything to anyone. The path to maturity is full of moments when it seems like there's no progress. You look ahead and see no clear signs. But if you look back, you realize you're no longer the same. The way you think, react, and decide has changed. This invisible evolution is what paves the way for leaps that seem impossible to those who still live in a hurry. And perhaps the biggest surprise of this process is realizing that the delay you so feared has turned into your advantage. Because while others were exhausting themselves rushing, you were strengthening your foundations. And when the right opportunity comes along, you won't need to chase it. It will recognize that you're ready. In a world where everyone believes they understand control, few perceive the quiet subtlety with which it truly manifests. True control doesn't impose itself as a visible blow, but seeps in like water seeping through invisible cracks, slowly shaping the environment to its advantage. This is why, when someone attempts to dominate through explicit force, they usually create resistance. But when they lead through constant presence, the silent language of gestures, and a precise understanding of the moment, they build a power that no one can challenge without appearing irrational. Some people confuse leadership with popularity, respect with fear, and authority with aggression. However, true authority arises from a complex mix of consistency, perception, and strategic patience. A study conducted by a European university found that the most influential leaders were not those who spoke the most in meetings, but rather those who silently controlled the flow of conversations, intervening only when they knew their words would be decisive. This ability to bide their time, to cultivate a mental terrain before planting an idea, is what separates the vulgar manipulator from the refined strategist. Imagine a warrior who knows the enemy's weakness, but doesn't attack the moment he sees it. Instead, he observes, adjusts his stance, and creates an environment in which the opponent becomes more exposed with each step. This warrior understands that patience isn't passivity, it's a weapon. And you? Have you ever noticed how many battles you've lost simply because you acted too soon? The human mind is driven by predictable patterns, and this is where the strategist builds his field of action. Behavioral psychologists identify that, in groups, most decisions are influenced by small, unconscious cues. A simple eyebrow raise, a prolonged pause before responding, or even deliberate silence in the face of provocation can redefine the entire power dynamic. This is the territory where silent presence operates, not in the noise, but in the gaps. And if you believe that silence is a terrain of vulnerability, you may have already been manipulated by it without realizing it. Well-placed silence forces others to fill the void, and in doing so, they reveal what they truly think, feel, or fear. This is why many strategists, from imperial courts to high-level negotiating tables, train themselves to endure the discomfort of silence. Whoever speaks first loses. Whoever withstands the invisible pressure wins. Throughout history, Great leaders have masterfully employed this principle. Niccolo Machiavelli, in Private Letters, described how more than one state decision was shaped not by fiery speeches, but by glances exchanged at banquets and the way certain matters were left hanging. This shows that, more than controlling the narrative, the game master controls its breath, deciding when it accelerates and when it slows down. You walk into a room and immediately feel everyone modulating their tone of voice, adjusting their posture, and choosing their words more carefully. Know that you're in the presence of someone who understands this kind of power. It's not a power that's declared, but rather one that's felt. It's almost impossible to fake for long because it's built with layers of consistency, an unshakable presence, an upright posture, a gaze that doesn't need to threaten to be noticed. But how do you build this presence? First, you need to abandon haste. Haste betrays insecurity, and insecurity is the antidote to respect. Second, you need to cultivate active observation, not just seeing, but interpreting. And third, it's essential to learn to say less and act with more meaning. Every gesture, every word must carry the weight of intentionality. This way, when you speak, everyone will listen, not by the volume of your voice, but by the scarcity and value of each intervention. However, there is a danger in mastering this kind of power, the temptation to use it to destroy rather than build. History is replete with figures who, by mastering the psychological game, succumbed to their own pride. They created environments so controlled that they stifled innovation, killed spontaneity, and became prisoners of their own empire of silence. Here, true mastery lies in knowing how to balance presence and freedom, influence and space for others to grow. Perhaps the greatest challenge is remaining vigilant so as not to turn control into tyranny. And it is at this point that the inevitable question arises. What do you want to leave behind? A legacy of obedience or genuine respect? The difference between the two may seem small in the short term, but it defines centuries of impact. True respect lives on even when you're not present. Obedience dies the moment your authority disappears. That's why, ultimately, every silent strategist must also be an architect of trust. Trust is the only currency that stands the test of time and distance. You can conquer territories with fear, but you can only maintain an empire with loyalty. And loyalty is born from the perception that, despite control, there is justice, balance, and purpose. So when you're gone, your influence will continue to shape decisions as if you were still there. You might think all of this requires innate talent, but the truth is, it's all about deliberate practice. It starts in everyday life, resisting the urge to respond immediately, maintaining composure even in the face of minor provocations, cultivating the habit of observing more than speaking. Gradually, this builds into a presence that can't be improvised. And then comes the most fascinating moment, when you realize you no longer have to strive to be noticed. Your simple entry into a room creates an almost imperceptible, yet profoundly real, shift in the way people interact. It's at this point that you stop playing the game and become the board. And when that happens, control is no longer a matter of struggle, but of naturalness. You don't command, you are the axis around which everything revolves. Silence is more eloquent than any scream. It is in it that invisible tension builds, the kind that captures attention and dominates perception. Often, it is not action that commands respect, but the absence of it, calculated and charged with meaning. Throughout history, leaders, strategists, and figures of power have understood that a silent threat is more paralyzing than an explosion of force. Waiting, when controlled, is an instrument of absolute power. But how many people today still have the patience and composure to endure this waiting without giving in to the impulse to act? How many prefer strategic calm to immediate reaction? When you don't react to an attack, you transform it into uncertainty for the attacker. The attacker's mind begins to corrode with questions that have no immediate answer. Didn't he hear? Is he planning something? Did I make a mistake? This doubt is a powerful psychological weapon, and the cost of using it is only your emotional discipline. There is, however, a risk. Silence is only powerful when supported by a strong presence. If you don't convey security and self-control, silence becomes passivity, and passivity is interpreted as weakness. What many don't understand is that respect rarely arises from excessive words. It's built on the contrast between what's said and what's withheld. Imagine an environment where everyone talks, discusses, and gives their opinion. Those who listen, analyze, and speak only when necessary are perceived as wiser and more confident. It's not the volume of the voice that matters, but the weight of what's said. And this weight isn't achieved by speaking more, but by choosing better. Quiet power also reveals itself in how you control your space. It's not just what you say or don't say, but how you occupy a room, how you position yourself, how you maintain eye contact, how your posture conveys stability. Have you ever noticed how some people walk into a room and everyone immediately notices? They don't need to raise their voice or gesticulate excessively. It's the balance between confidence and economy of movement that makes them magnetic. This silent presence can be trained, and it begins with observation. Watch interactions without rushing to participate. Notice the subtle reactions, the micro-expressions, the discomfort or interest in people's eyes. Every second of conscious silence is a building block in the construction of a solid and impenetrable image. But this requires you to resist the initial discomfort of not being the center of attention through speech. In the power game, immediate reactions almost always favor the opponent. They want you to expose yourself, to show your cards too soon. When you wait, they expose themselves. It's like in a chess game, a hasty move opens up gaps. Patience forces the other to reveal their strategy ahead of time. This logic applies not only to direct conflicts, but to negotiations, discussions, and even personal relationships. There's a crucial point few master: transforming silence into invisible action. While appearing calm, you're preparing, gathering information and reinforcing your position. You're the motionless predator watching your prey approach, unaware that you've already entered attack range. When action comes, it's definitive, because it's been thought out, measured, and inevitable. But how can you prevent this posture from being interpreted as inertia? The answer lies in consistency. If you combine silence with small signs of control, a firm posture, a direct gaze, clear decisions when speaking, the environment understands that your calm is not weakness, but choice. It's the coherence between what is seen and what is felt that sustains the image of strength. Historically, leaders who mastered silent power were feared and respected in equal measure. Consider figures like Talleyrand, who in 19th century European courts said less than anyone else, but influenced more than anyone else. His skill lay in listening and intervening only when intervention would change the course of the conversation. The impact came precisely from the rarity and weight of his words. The practical application of this principle is more necessary today than ever. In a world where everyone rushes to speak, express their opinion, and react, those who can wait, observe, and act at the right moment stand out as authority figures. In the professional environment, for example, a leader who listens first and responds calmly conveys more security than one who reacts impulsively. In personal relationships, the same logic applies. Strategic silence maintains emotional control and avoids unnecessary conflict. Have you ever wondered how many opportunities you've missed simply because you reacted too quickly? How many times have you revealed information or intentions before you were sure the timing was right? Silence isn't absence, it's preparation, and those who master this art are rarely surprised. However, mastering silence requires more than self-control. It requires a deep understanding of the social and emotional dynamics around you. It's knowing when to prolong the wait and when to act, without letting patience turn into paralysis. It's a delicate balance, achieved only with conscious practice. In the end, true strength lies not in showing everything you're capable of, but in carefully choosing the moment to show it. The impact of a gesture, a word, or a decision increases proportionally to the time and mystery that precede it, and when it finally arrives, it's impossible to ignore. Silence, then, ceases to be merely the absence of sound and becomes absolute presence. When we reach the end of a journey like this, we're not just concluding a video or a sequence of words. We're at a turning point, and perhaps you, who have been there every moment, are feeling something hard to describe. A mixture of clarity and uncertainty, motivation and fear. This sensation is a sign that something within you has been touched, that a seed has been planted. But seeds by themselves don't transform anything. It's care, action, patience, and repetition that make the invisible become visible. Throughout this journey, we've discussed principles that challenge how we see the world and ourselves. We've talked about choices, personal responsibility, the courage to break patterns, and the strength to face discomfort. But now is the time to transform inspiration into method, emotion into direction, and theory into practice. Because without real application, All this talk gets lost in the daily noise. The first step to internalizing any change is creating a personal action plan. And here's the framework I propose, something anyone, regardless of where they are right now, can put into practice. 1. Brutal clarity about what you want. Grab a piece of paper or a document on your phone and write down, without filtering, what you really want to change or achieve. Be specific. I want to be happier is too abstract. I want to create a business that allows me to earn X amount per month and have free time is clear. Clarity is the antidote to inertia. Ask yourself, if I don't change anything, where will I be in 1 year? And if I act now, what can I achieve in the same time frame? These questions create urgency. Break down into micro goals. A big goal is intimidating, but micro goals make the impossible manageable. If your goal is to learn a new skill, turn it into specific weekly actions. For example, study 30 minutes a day is much more actionable than I want to be fluent. This way, you accumulate small victories, and each victory reinforces the next. 3. Daily reinforcement ritual. Motivation evaporates quickly. Conscious habits keep the flame burning. Create a small daily ritual that connects you to your purpose. It could be rereading your goals, visualizing your desired future for 2 minutes, or writing down a gratitude and a step for the day. This sets the tone and prevents you from getting lost in distraction. 4. Intentional exposure to discomfort. No significant change occurs without discomfort. Intentionally choose one action each week that pushes you outside your comfort zone. It could be making a difficult call, starting a conversation you've been avoiding for months, or trying something you fear failing. Each such action builds your resilience and recalibrates your boundaries. B5. Constant feedback. Don't rely solely on your perception. Seek feedback from people, from results, from data. If what you're doing isn't working, change your approach. Persistence isn't about repeating the same mistake. It's about adjusting until you find a path that works. 6. Review and adjustment. Every 30 days, stop and review. What progress has been made? Where has there been stagnation? What can be improved? This review prevents months from passing without real progress. This plan is simple to understand but not easy to execute. What makes it powerful is consistency. And here's something few realize. You don't need to feel in the mood to act. Action breeds motivation, not the other way around. When you start, even without the will, momentum is born from movement. And why does all this matter? Because life won't slow down for you to organize. The days will keep passing, whether you act or not. Every moment you delay, something is lost and never comes back. But every moment you decide to act, even imperfectly, you gain a piece of the future you desire. You might be thinking, but what if I fail? And I tell you, you will fail. Yes, not once, but many times. And that's inevitable. But every failure provides insights. Every mistake refines your strategy. And every failure, if used wisely, builds the foundation for the next step. The real tragedy isn't failing. It's giving up or never trying. Now look back and realize, you're no longer the same person who played this video. Something has changed. It may be subtle, but it's there. And this change can expand or disappear, depending on what you do in the next few hours. So here's my challenge. Before you go to sleep tonight, take one step, any step toward what you want. It doesn't have to be grand, but it does have to be real. If you feel this content spoke to you, that it somehow gave you clarity, courage, or motivation, I want you to continue this journey with me. Subscribe to the Deep Psyche channel right now, not because of the numbers, but because I know that if you've made it this far, you're ready to go deeper. Like this video so it reaches more people who, like you, need this message today. And please share your question, your experience, or even a difficult moment you're going through in the comments. And if you prefer, do so anonymously. Your words could be the spark that ignites transformation in someone else. The future you want isn't some distant, perfect day. It starts today, with the next step you decide to take. So go, because life is too short to wait.